Well, welcome everybody. Today's community forum is on expanding access through online education. My name is Gabe Tilove. I'm the Associate Director of Adult Education at Phipps Conservatory and Botanic Gardens, which is in Pittsburgh. And I wanted to just run through as a start some of the goals that I have for today, just to make sure we're on the same page, and an overview of today's agenda. So my main goal with this is that together as colleagues, we start to create some shared narrative regarding online learning's role in expanding access to our garden programming. So we'll talk a little bit about the hows of doing online learning today, but a portion of this is going to be talking about kind of the why, and especially around how it expands access and why that's important. My goal today is that we do leave ample time to learn from other educators' experiences with online education. I am going to be sharing perspectives today that I've had from the last 4 or 5 months of diving into online education, and from conversations I've had with other public garden educators, but we are some 60 or 70 strong today, so excited to hear all the creative approaches that all of you are taking. And towards that end, I do hope that everyone is creating connections today. So part of the reason that I've asked you to add your garden to your name and to introduce yourself is that my hope is that throughout today, when you hear someone else speak and they're saying something that sounds like something you want to approach, I'm hoping that you're jotting down names and gardens so that you can follow up after this to have more in-depth conversations, because we're in the online environments, we're going to be taking 100 different approaches to this, but there are, I'm sure, going to be several other gardens who are trying to achieve the same thing. So take note of who is trying to accomplish the same approach as you. Also, we are both sort of explicitly with some of the exercises and generally trying to gather input from all of you to help inform future community conversations or trainings or resource development. We have an hour and a half today, which is great, but big picture, we are gardens across the country who, as of 6 months ago, may have had very little online education and are all making a huge transition to it. And, some of it may be permanent, some of it may be temporary, but as a collective community, we are making a huge transition. And so the hope is that this isn't the last in the conversation, but that we continue to provide resources and places to connect. So for today's agenda, we'll spend about 10 minutes for introductions, which is where we are now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Phipps and just our background in a moment. And then I have a presentation to give, and it's only about 8 slides. I'm hoping it takes about 15 minutes or so. And then I want to leave the remainder of this 30 minutes that I have dedicated to have some reflection. So I'm going to put forward a narrative around access, a narrative around how online learning expands access to our programs. And I want to hear from everyone for the remainder of that section, what elements of what I said affirm what you know to be true, and therefore maybe it's true across our gardens, what contradicts things that you're experiencing to help expand our understanding, and then what's missing. What are the other things you're seeing around expanded access that I'm not hitting on? So that'll be about 30 minutes here. From there, we're going to move into a bit of a tech talk, and it's not going to be as dialogue based. We're going to use an outside program called Padlet to collect everyone's technology experiences and goals and ability to contribute to a larger collection of information. And I'll explain all of that, but I know that technology is something that we heard at our annual community meeting is a major interest of people. And I do want to make sure to address it. And I think we're going to try to do it in a time efficient way today. And then essentially the last 30 minutes of today's presentation is spotlights. So I'm going to ask, we're going to go into sort of we're going to take down the presentation, and I want to hear from as many people as we can, succinct examples that you can share of either unique or replicable programming or an approach to online programming that's working well in an online environment. So We have 30 minutes. We've got 70 people on. So if you can sort of give some short examples of what's working so that people can find you and connect with you after to hear the more detailed story. And then we'll wrap up for a few minutes. So that's our agenda for today. I'm going to dive right in. A little bit about Phipps and my experience. Prior to April, we had precisely 0 online education. So we are not coming from some deep place of having done this for the last 10 years. We started with a $15 pro Zoom account. Now we have 3 for our department, sort of our 3 classrooms, if you will. About a month and a half ago, we added Google Classrooms as a free to nonprofits learning management system. And then we use our regular registration software, which happens to be AllTrue, although there's nothing special about AllTrue, to handle our signup. So there was no change there. So that's what we did to get started. We have converted a majority of our programming from in-person to online. We are online through the end of the year and will probably be online exclusively through March, and then beyond that, we'll see. Right now, we have about 2.5 staff overseeing the majority of our classes. I have 2 separate staff that are dedicated to our culinary programs. We're offering about 80 programs this fall, which is September through December, and that's a mix of single session and multi-session classes. And predominantly, we're using contracted instructors, although a few staff also do teach. We're experimenting with a range of formats. So like many people, lecture with PowerPoint is an easy conversion. We're doing multi-week classes with lecture, assignments between weeks, and built-in discussion. In our floral and culinary, we're doing a lot of demos, but also make-along classes where we provide kind of recipes, shopping lists for students to purchase their own materials and make along in the class session. We have a very robust botanical art program that includes, demo, video, review of student work, a strong program there. And we just had our first full day sort of conference style event. So we are not experts in any one of these formats, but we are experimenting across a wide range. So that's where we are. And I expect that there's people today here who are on a whole continuum within this experience. As we talk about expanded access, I'm going to be looking at 3 primary categories: age, expanding access across age, across incomes, and across location or sort of access to transportation. So I'm going to go more in depth into those 3 areas. And I did want to just say, across our gardens, we are also thinking surely about how to increase access across sort of racial and cultural diversity. And what I want to say is I do think that by eliminating some barriers, especially related to income and location, we may end up, as a result, inviting in more racial and cultural diversity. But those things alone aren't going to give us a more diverse audience. If we're not developing our programs with those audiences in mind, online education in and of itself isn't going to be a silver bullet. So there's a lot of good work happening through the association, through the idea work. And so, I say seek that out. If that's a particular goal of yours, seek out that work and then layer it into the online education piece. The other thing that you'll hear a lot when talking about expanding access is a question about the digital divide. And so what that often refers to is some people have technology, some people don't. So they may not have a laptop at home or may not have access to a regular internet connection. And I'm not going to address that much today because I think primarily that is a subject that is, I think, being addressed at a societal level. Just an example, Pittsburgh Public Schools is distributing thousands of laptops to homes this fall because they need to address it at a large scale level. Larger foundations are looking at internet access and home technology access. And so they are important to understand that it does factor into access to our programs, but I don't expect gardens in their program development to be addressing the digital divide. The main thing that I see that we have control over is simplicity of access as almost more important than the type of hardware that's required, because almost everyone can access some level of online education, whether it be through a phone or a tablet, or a home computer. But if you create online programming that is complicated, involves multiple steps, involves new programs, you may actually create a divide just around tech competency more than anything else. And so just to be conscientious about that in program development, but as far as internet connectivity and access to actual hardware, that's something I think being addressed at a larger level. Okay, so let's start with age. The current conditions that I see is that work and childcare responsibilities limit evening class participation of parents with young children. Also, work responsibilities limit really any kind of daytime class participation by working age people. So as a sort of rule of thumb, our audiences tend to sort of towards the more retired age as a result of some of these conditions. Through online learning, it in fact has made it easier for parents to perform some childcare duties, both immediately before and after class, and in some cases during class. So in our case, I've seen not a lot of babies in classes, but more babies than I ever saw when we had in-person classes. And so a parent can get dinner ready before class because they're not having to commute to us. They can be present during class in their home. So even if they have their child set up doing something else, they can still be present and responsible. And so I have seen an increase in participation from people with young children at home. In addition, we've been able to offer many more digital lunch and learns, whereas we would never have asked people to come to campus for 30 minutes in the middle of the day. We have a lot of working age people who are able to participate in programs over a lunch break, something we really never did prior to our online education. So those are two ways that I think online learning is going to enable us to expand access for people of a wider age range. The other thing I'll just note, in our classes, we don't allow anyone under the age of 18 without parental supervision for child care, for child safety reasons. Because we have expanded staff oversight and we have a staff person in every online class, we actually now are able, a staff person who's had child abuse clearances and the student is at home, we can allow students under the age of 18 to participate. And we have had that already in some of our online classes where we weren't able to do it before. For income, adult programs, in my experience, are more likely to be expected to earn a significant portion of their, to earn revenue, to offset their expenses, more so, say, than some of the youth education or outreach education that's done. And simultaneously, we are less likely to receive grants that underwrites enrollment and scholarships. That may not be true for everyone, but I would say as across our country, that feels true at public gardens. Coupling that with limited classroom seat capacity, as a program coordinator, we are often compelled to get maximum value for classes, and so are less likely to offer free or discounted attendance. So for us, we may offer a few free staff seats, we may offer a few scholarship seats, but we need to look at the bottom line for our classes to make them break even or earn revenue. With online learning, there are more flexible class sizes. I mean, you may have a natural limit in Zoom with 100, but it may only be an extra, 40 or 50 bucks to expand to 300 or 500. So it's very easy for us to add more capacity as needed. There's also reduced overhead. So, for a conference style event, I'm not paying to fly speakers in, I'm not paying for lunch, I'm not paying for linens. And so my overhead is usually reduced, which allows me to earn my revenue. I can earn my revenue while offering more discounted admission without hurting my bottom line. So for instance, we have some outreach programs and partnerships with organizations that serve low-income Pittsburghers. And so we can say to them, listen, we're gonna advertise this program as full price to the general public, but you can have a discount code to people in your network, and they can get in at free or reduced cost, and it doesn't end up hurting my bottom line. So we're able to offer to a wider set of income. In addition, there are particular programs, because we can have bigger class sizes and reduced overhead, that we just may be able to reduce the overall price, making it more accessible to everybody where we choose. And this one may be the most obvious, but classes are most often frequented by people who live nearby, maybe within a 30 to 45-minute drive of your institution. Virtual learning obviously makes this program much more accessible to a wider geography, and for people who have transportation challenges. So for us, there may be people who live in the city, but some of our sites are not particularly close to a bus line, or that might be an unfair onus to ask of someone to take a bus or two to get to your program, even if they just live 5 or 10 miles away. So we have definitely been able to expand both the geography and access to people without personal vehicles. We have seen, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but in Pittsburgh, the reach of our organization probably extends, to an hour and a half, even 2 hours. People come for special events. People come, 2 or 3 times a year. They even, our membership expands pretty far, but it's too far for people to commute, 4 or 5 Tuesday nights in a row, especially, fighting rush hour traffic. And so we've seen a lot of people in that hour to hour and 15-minute range who said, I never would have taken the class before, but thank goodness you're online now. It has made your classes accessible. We've heard that a lot. Similar, this last point, eliminating commute time, allowing for more varied class structures. I say that as far as like the lunch and learn as an example. You would never ask people to drive even 15 or 20 minutes for a 30-minute program. You would need to sort of have a full class, but if someone's just tuning in from home, you can have much more varied class structure, which is unique. When people begin to talk about, we can attract students from anywhere, sometimes I hear from fellow garden educators some fear that says, okay, well, if people can take classes anywhere, why would they take a class from me and not just take classes from Chicago Botanic Garden, or from New York or from Missouri? Why would they bother with a class from me? And I guess I put this slide in just to affirm that I think that there is still ample space for every garden to have unique online education, and I really see it at 3 levels. First and foremost, you still provide a lot of local expertise. So what's different between a class through you versus a class through a garden somewhere else or a YouTube video is that you're able to provide locally relevant information that creates real value for students. So you can make nursery recommendations. You can talk about, if you're talking about wildflowers, you can talk about other places in your county to go on wildflower hikes. You can talk about upcoming events at your garden that people can connect with. And so it's more than just the pure information. Because if it was just the pure information, there are a million places people can get that, but your hyper-local expertise is what's going to bring value to those students. I also think, as I talked about, we're beginning to see people from more like an hour to an hour and a half away attend our classes. I think it's worth thinking about your garden as part of a larger eco-region. So I have the picture on the right-hand side. The upper right-hand side is the Allegheny Plateau, which is an area that runs from, as you can see, southern New York through western Pennsylvania and into parts of eastern Ohio and West Virginia. That's a really big area and probably bigger than we'll be able to cover from an educational standpoint. But when we talk about the type of gardening that we preach, which is regionally appropriate, ecologically rich, and beautiful, we ultimately can create content that serves that entire ecoregion because we share similar growing conditions and plant palettes. Currently, we're sort of expanding the way we think about programs to Western Pennsylvania. So everyone from, from the northwest of the state down to the southwest of the state. And so I think it is good for our gardens to think about expanding who they serve, and it may even lead to partnerships where we could talk about educating for the Allegheny Plateau and connect with gardens in West Virginia, Eastern Ohio, and Southern New York, so that we're creating content across that entire region. Similarly, I think online education does provide a unique opportunity for new collaborations that support your mission. And so you do have more of an opportunity now to be the conduit by which you connect your audience to a national or international conversations and expertise related to your mission. So I have here a raised bed. We do a lot of urban garden outreach. And so we do education there, but there are gardens across the country that are doing great work in urban spaces. And so I would love to be able to connect our Pittsburgh audience to educators who are doing very similar work in urban settings all across the Rust Belt, because we all deal with post-industrial cities, with vacant land, with contamination. And so we're able to actually expand the expertise that our students have connection with and be kind of a curator of national expertise. And so whatever your mission is, I mean, maybe your mission is around orchid collection and you can connect with experts in Southeast Asia, but you are going to be able to expand who you bring in and curate that for your audience and your institution. Some additional benefits. There are auto captioning services that are easy to plug into Zoom and other formats, which makes it much easier for people who are deaf or hard of hearing to participate. Fully online and hybrid classes, even once we are able to go back to in-classroom programs, could ease the demand in the future for classroom spaces. I know our organization, we are in the process of considering, prior to COVID, do we need to expand our educational space to grow our programs? And now the answer is probably not, because we could have a portion of our classes fully online, a portion of our classes that meet 3 sessions online and 3 sessions in person, and some of our classes that are all in person, but ultimately reducing the demand for the need to expand, which is incredibly expensive for our institutions. As I mentioned earlier, we also have access to a wider array of instructors now without spending money on travel and lodging. I mean, it feels terrible to spend your instructor budget on the local hotel and on Delta Airlines, when it'd be better to go into their pocket and back into your budget. I also just wanted to mention briefly, because I've heard this come up a lot around online education, is you do not need to charge less for online education. Not all classes translate as well to online, and so some things may not work or some things may be reduced price, but others are just the same or better. And so don't undersell the worth of your programming. When we first started our online education, we did reduce the price a little bit because we were experimenting and we didn't know what it would be like. But at this point, we've gotten back to our regular rate for almost all of our classes, and in some cases increased the rate, and not seen a drop off in registration. In fact, things are going very well. And so I want to put that out there to all of you to say, like, Pittsburgh is not a big market. Pittsburgh is not a wealthy market, but we are charging full price for our classes and making good revenue for our department with 100% online education. So you don't have to tell your leadership this, but there isn't a great excuse not to be making money in the online realm. In addition, as it comes to value and charging for this, I have had a few students balk and say, well, you don't have to pay, for a custodian, you don't need to pay for these other things. Why are you charging us as much? But I'm going to tell you now that online learning is likely more staff time required to put it on. So don't undervalue it from that perspective either, because this is going to require significant staff time if you want to dedicate resources to it. So don't undersell it. Okay, and I think this may be my last slide here. We are hoping, as online education becomes more prominent, I think the role of the moderator also becomes more prominent. And so this is usually a staff person or a trained volunteer who sits in on class, helps start the class, helps run the technology, helps introduce things, helps moderate questions from the audience. And I think it's a role that may or may not have existed with your in-person classes, but is important on the online environment, because more so than ever, it becomes the voice of the organization. It also supports the instructor. For anyone who's done online education, you're on a little bit of an island here. You don't feel the energy of the group. You absolutely, there needs to be someone there who's comfortable with the technology, moderating questions, helping to mute and unmute participants, at a more advanced level, engaging students in dialogue, managing breakout rooms and polls, uploading files and links in the chat, helping students engage in between class sessions, so sort of sending out homework or collecting assignments. And so you just to be aware, this is an important role, and a role that can be very time intensive, and a role you may need to train more people to help support, because a moderator can really make or break a class, and help support your instructors so that they feel more comfortable doing more work with you. So just something to be cognizant of. Okay, so at this point, I am gonna pause. I'm gonna come out of sharing mode. And just a reiteration of the question, I would like to open up for another 10 minutes or so, just a reflection on these accessibility ideas that I've put forward. What sounds right to you? What doesn't sound right? And what am I missing? So feel free to just jump in. Anyone's welcome to unmute themselves and add. I'd love to hear from some people.
First of all, thanks, Gabe. This is Rebecca Turt with the Huntsville Botanical Garden. For those that don't know, I'm now at the Huntsville Botanical Garden, not at Moore Farms Botanical Garden. But one thing I noticed in the chat that I wanted to mention too is pricing structures. We are launching all of our virtual education starting in September, which is really exciting for us, both for adult and for virtual field trips. And so our pricing structure is different for both. So in the chat, it talks about cuts with school districts and programs and understanding those and the limitations they have. So our virtual pricing for field trips is different for our youth side based on the experience and not being on site. But our adult education pricing is still on the same platform that it's always been on. So we heard both sides and calls for it, and made sure we test our adult education with a focus group too, just as some pricing input.
Thanks, Rebecca. Other comments here around access. What are, how are you seeing online education increase access to your programs?
Hi guys, I'm Dana with Trees Atlanta, and we've definitely seen a lot more participation in our adult level classes. Youth is a little different. I think especially with the kids being in online school for so long, we haven't really been able to tap into as well with getting our youth involved, because their attention span to it is a little bit less. And now that a lot of our schools are going back to school, either doing a hybrid program or doing fully online, we're trying to tap into teachers in doing our typical face-to-face classes that we do in schools with an online platform, trying to work with them with the platform that they either use or using our own, and we're using Zoom right now. But for a lot of our classes, especially coming to downtown Atlanta in the middle of the day or coming in the evening, can present a challenge for a lot of people that may want to come. And what we were experiencing last fall would be a lot of people who would want to come to our classes and would sign up, but then we'd have a melt rate of about 30%, which is typical. But, people just become disinterested when they have to, battle traffic after work. So online classes have definitely helped with that with our adult education. We've had a lot more engagement. And so now we're looking at expanding that with more tours.
Thanks, Dana. That's great. We've experienced something similar. Thanks. Who else?
I'll chime in. Hi, my name is Maggie. I work at the North Carolina Arboretum in Asheville, North Carolina. There were some comments in the chat about recording, and so I wanted to share what we've been doing, and that is that we're recording basically all of our online classes and then sending the recordings, making them limited time that they're allowed to watch them. So the link expires after 30 days, but we do record all of our classes so we can share it with those folks afterwards. That way they can review, or if they had to leave early, they can catch up, or if they weren't able to attend the class live because of scheduling conflicts, then we send them the recording so they can watch it later on.
Thanks, Maggie. That's great, and it's interesting. I mean, you know, from an access standpoint, we've also had people say, well, I can only get there for half of it, or, you know, I'm going to miss. I can make 3 of the 4 sessions, and so the assurance that we can provide a recording does make a big difference for people. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, anybody else?
This is Susan from Green Spring Gardens. I have noticed, not just related to online programs, but just in general, our visitation up on our grounds, because our gardens are open, our buildings are closed to the public. We have a lot of
sponsors visibility.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Susan. Sorry.
Okay. So we had a lot more people coming to the gardens that have never been here before, because all of a sudden they're looking for new things to do. And we're definitely noticing an uptake in our new visitation, people who've never been here before. So that's a new audience that we're starting to try to capture. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how to find them, and because the grounds are open, they're not necessarily coming into the building, but we're definitely seeing those changes of a new audience.
That's great. Thanks, Susan. Other folks, online education expanding your reach or access.
Hey there, this is Carissa Doherty from the Martin Arboretum. One element of access that we've been thinking a lot about and still kind of trying to figure out how to best provide it is access for people with different differing abilities. So folks with visual impairment or people with hearing impairment, and what providing content and programs for those people looks like, maybe potentially differently, and maybe in even an expanded way in an online format. So I don't necessarily have any great success stories to share right now. I think it's something we're exploring and trying to figure out how to best do that. But I'd love to see the conversation expand to include that level of access and accessibility as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carissa. And I mentioned it briefly, but I mean, one element of that, not the only element, but for us, it was a challenge for us to sort of get interpreters, sign language interpreters in for programs at a cost-effective rate for our programs. And we could do it, but it was challenging on a regular basis. Online education, it's very easy for us to auto caption. It's not a perfect solution, but it has made a big difference. And we've heard really positive remarks from people, both people who are deaf, and also people who are just hard of hearing and prefer, like the people who put captions on for their TV on a regular basis. It just sort of helps, it helps support. So there are opportunities there. I'll be interested to see what else you explore around people who are differently able. Yeah.
Well, and I think the interesting thing is to then, think about it as, when we are designing differently for people with different abilities, is that a lot of times it makes the experience better for people who don't have those disabilities. So that universal design principle can really play out if you have everyone on board, if the instructors kind of understand that and you're kind of, you prioritize that. I think it can be really great for all the participants.
Thanks, Carissa. Other folks, access, reach, ways online is changing your audience.
Hi, Gabe, it's Jill Sellinger, Chicago Botanic Garden. And we were just like you. We had never done any online classes, so we got thrown into it, and it's proven to be really successful. And as far as the access, what I think has been really interesting, a few classes that I've moderated recently, we had someone from Nebraska who was sitting in on one of our photography classes. We had someone else from out of state. I know some of our yoga classes have people from, that are like, traveling, and so they can come in and participate even though they're on the road somewhere. So I think that part is really fascinating. The one question that I have about it, and our team has had, is how do we market that? How do we market our programming, outside of our normal reach? So that might be something interesting to think about.
Yeah, great question, Joe. Other folks, expanded access. What's it look like at your garden?
Well, Duncan Himmelman here from Mount Cuba Center in Delaware. Yeah, we did a zip code map of our ecoregion and found that our audience is spread from Washington, D.C. up into the sort of southern New York area where our native plant focus is, that's the breadth of our native plant focus. But a couple of things that Gabe was talking about earlier in terms of diversity of audience, different income bracketing, just sort of the demographics of who's taking our classes. We have had fewer people fill out our evaluations, which include that demographic information, than we do with in-house classes. So I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable with how we are doing, with our online classes. We get far fewer evaluations because, of course, people, it's the whim of the person at the computer. So the only real data that we can collect that we have any kind of, assurance of is the zip code. So that's what we can say. Yeah, these people took our classes, and this is the breadth of zip codes that they're in. But the other data that we are looking for is spotty. So that I find has been one of the problems with online classes. We think we're doing great, but those are the people who fill out the evaluations.
That's a great point, Duncan. To echo that, we've also seen a dive in people filling out evaluations for the exact same reason. So if anyone, for the later part of this, when we get into sort of spotlighting success, if anyone has great examples of that, I would love for someone to share. At this point, and to keep us on schedule, I want to move to our tech talk portion. And so what I'm going to do is I am about to share a link in the chat. So if you want to open your chat box, if people could stop chatting just for 1 minute so I can add this in, I'm going to add a link to a thing called Padlet. Don't click it just yet, but it's going to take you to a site that looks something like this, okay? So this is a live Padlet. You're all going to go to the same thing, and there are 4 questions here, okay? And you can add, in each column, you can sort of add your thoughts under each column. The 4 thoughts are, 4 prompts. What piece of technology or program most helps, like program like Zoom or something like that, like what piece of technology or program most helps you enhance the student experience? So like, what have you enjoyed the most? What is the thing that has really made the difference for you? As far as support, those of you who are really trying to find your way, or what advice do you still need on technology upgrades? What are you trying to accomplish that you currently cannot? So like, we're trying to get our floral design classes online, but we can't figure out how to live stream the student experience. So it's sort of, you can create a case there. Or what training does your team need? So you can answer all of these, you can answer one of them. Outside resources, outside of our community, where are you finding information about best practices for online learning? So virtual training is something that people are doing nationally. So we shouldn't have to figure this out all ourselves. And so if there are particular podcasts or websites or magazines or e-blasts that you find particularly useful, we'd love for you to list them here. And then sharing out. So this is the final one that I will sort of explain a little bit more. It's, are you willing to share a 1 to 2 page description of your tech setup? And if so, just put your name, your garden, and your email in this column, and I'll follow up with you after to connect. And I want to give you an example of that here briefly before we move on. I am part of, so every week, I have a group of about 6 or 7 other adult education coordinators that I connect with just to talk about online education. It has been tremendously valuable. And one of those folks is Tara Carpenter at the Desert Botanical Garden. And ahead of this meeting, she shared a 1-pager that hopefully you're seeing now that was written by Joan McDonnell, who works at the Desert Botanical Garden. And she was creating short videos for her volunteers. So that was one method for sort of virtual education that she was doing. And she wrote up a really terrific 1-pager the equipment that she uses, microphones, other equipment, how it's being used, video editing software, how they're sharing it with the volunteers, and just sort of general feedback. I am going to share this out, and I highly recommend you check out the YouTube link. Joan put together a really fun overview of how she uses her gimbal, which I am gonna buy now that I've seen that. Joan, I see that you are there. Do you have anything to add about sort of putting this together, or what your experience was in sort of gathering your equipment?
Just that I tried doing it, first of all, using just my iPhone and step ladders and clips, and it was just so difficult. So I spent some time doing YouTubes, and I've listed some of the YouTube references that I found very helpful. And I basically just started looking at what would help me the most. And so this is where I'm at just now. And it has made an enormous difference to my ability, both predominantly actually to work alone, because I can set it up. And when you can see from the little video, I can actually set up my iPhone to focus on something in particular. And then I can actually work on what I'm trying to demonstrate, and the camera will follow me within reason. And that has been a tremendous, obviously that and having the wireless speakers ensures that you get a consistent audio attached to the video. So those are the two main things that have allowed me to create just reasonable quality video.
That's perfect. Thank you, Joan. And so what I'm going to do, if you put your information in this final column, essentially what I'm going to do is follow up with kind of a blank worksheet, kind of like Joan put together, to have you fill in. And my hope is then to collect, I mean, if we can get a dozen of them, I think that would be great, maybe more. I can share that out with everyone so that they can say, okay, if I'm looking to make short educational videos, or I'm looking to do live classes, or I'm looking to do cooking demos, it's just sort of a list of one-sheeters that you can read through to get a sense, and then also know who you can connect with in order to ask more questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give everyone a moment to access, to sort of go to this Padlet and begin filling this out. We're just going to take about 3 minutes. Take your time. I'm going to put on some music. So this is a 3-minute and 11-second song. If you have any trouble accessing the Padlet, just go ahead and answer those questions in the chat, and then we'll add them to the Padlet later, and then we will share the results of the Padlet with everyone. So, okay, feel free. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I know it didn't work perfectly for everyone, but hopefully that was a really valuable resource. That link will continue to work. So if you have it open and you want to add things later or after the meeting, I'm not going to close it immediately. But maybe tomorrow, what I can do is essentially save that, I think in PDF format or share it out in some way. So we'll share that out with everybody. And I'll be following up more directly with the people who said they were willing to contribute. And for those folks who did put questions or concerns in, we'll be sort of looking at that in part as, you know, can we answer some of these things directly? Can I make connections for people, or these things we could even put into the community forum for discussion in a broader context. So hopefully we'll be able to answer as many of your questions that came up as we can. Okay, we are on track. And at this point, I did want to open things up. You know, we have presumably been all working in our relatively small bubbles for the last 4 or 5 months, trying to figure this out. And I am very interested to hear from folks what is working for you. My hope is that people can be relatively succinct. We do want to hear some, you know, the details that make this thing work. And if you, as the audience, if you hear someone say something that interests you, write their name down and follow up afterwards. So, yeah, who's ready to share? Is someone willing to kick us off with something that's working for their program to get our brains going? Mo, I see you unmuted yourself, but I can't actually hear you. No.
No.
There you are.
There I am. Hey. Sorry about that. Technology, am I right? What we have found as I've started doing more hybrid style classes, I mentioned this on the Padlet as well, doing a little bit of a taster session via Instagram and Facebook Live has been really helpful for reaching outside audiences outside of the metro Atlanta region. So that was something I kind of wanted to mention to folks who are kind of thinking, how do you tend to reach people who may not be in your geographic area? And thankfully, we also have someone who's a bit more adept at social media than I am, and hashtagging those, because you can save your Instagram and Facebook Live videos, hashtagging those, because people tend to search also through those hashtags. So we do things like urban gardening, or you know, grow your own food, or city growing as hashtags. Also pretty plants, it's a very popular hashtag. And we found that we've been able to add more outside engagement that way to upcoming events, lectures, and hybrid classes. So.
Awesome, thanks, Mo. Who else? Feel free to just jump in.
This is Kyle at Tower Hill Botanic Garden in Massachusetts, and we have really sort of edged or put ourselves into some online content, done some basic stuff, hopefully probably expand it more in the winter time. But one of the things that we thought for ourselves was this is a great opportunity to potentially partner with some other organizations. And I'd say one of the things that I'm most happy about was we were able to partner with another local botanic garden in the Berkshires to partner on an author talk. So we've been able to split costs, which has been really helpful for both of us, and then pool in audiences in the same state that kind of maybe don't go to the other botanic garden. And another thing it's really been able to show the community is that we are here kind of to support each other. So it's been really great from a level that we've been able to bring in a lot of great authors almost weekly from different places. Just last week, we had somebody from England give an author talk, which we wouldn't have been able to do, which was pretty great. And I know that our audience has really enjoyed being able to hear from these authors from different areas. So, but then also just getting to partner with another local botanic garden to offer these programs to our larger community has been really great.
Thanks, Kyle. That's great. Who's next?
This is Rebecca Turk with Huntsville Botanical Garden. Like I said earlier, we're about to launch all of our adult programming virtually, which is really exciting. But one thing we are playing with is just testing out lots of different ideas, kind of like Gabe, you mentioned at the beginning. Knowing and making sure our leadership understands and our board understands that in this pilot year, because we plan to do this post-COVID, is to see and take lots of good evaluation and surveys on what works. So testing out one-time classes a month with instructors versus 2-week series, 4-week series, 6 and 8 to see what is the best grasp for our audience, as well as also testing, evenings versus day versus morning, because it's a different audience range than we're used to. So testing all those things and getting feedback from the attendees. And then we're also testing honorarium structures, a little bit different than we had done in the past. So instead of only asking for set honorarium prices, some of them we're doing 50-50 deals, or they take 20, we take 80, where it's per class registrant. So the revenue is immediate versus you have to sell this many registrations before you start making your net revenue. So we've been testing around with different honorarium structures too. Which is something that traditionally here at Huntsville Botanical Garden hadn't been done, and also that I hadn't done previously. So interested to see what comes out of all of that. I'd be happy to share any of that information with anyone as we progress forward. But we're excited about playing with it all, and really interested on the honorarium side as well. So I just wanted to mention that. So if anyone wants to contact me in the future, happy to share.
Thanks, Rebecca. And Kyle, since you just spoke, I just want to throw it back to you just briefly, because something Rebecca said actually reminded me of something I know that you do, which is also sort of a split commission for instructors, which has allowed you to open up opportunities to sell the class, like a recorded version of the class afterwards, where sometimes an instructor might say, well, I don't want to give up ownership, but by doing percentages, it seems you've found a way to offer that. Can you just say a bit about that?
Yeah, that's correct. We just offer a percentage of the revenue, the registration revenue. And we've been doing a weekly webinar. Sorry, you're going to hear an announcement over the speaker potentially at the garden. We've been able to offer for 2 months after the webinar, the live webinar happens, a sort of on-demand webinar is what we've called it. And it's the same registration price. And the instructors have been open to it because from the live webinar through those 2 months, they get a percentage of all of that. So it's kind of been something they've been open to. And then after the 2 months end, same as somebody said before, we don't have ownership of it. So it comes down and then it's no longer available after that period of time.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that. Yeah, other folks. Examples of things that are working, or things you've learned, questions you've got, anything's fine, but love to hear great examples of what people are doing across the country.
I can share. I'm Rebecca with Queen's Botanical Garden in New York City, another Rebecca. And So we did a whole bunch of things. So we moved our school programs to online. I think it was back in April, like right at the beginning. And we found that a lot of the public school classes just all canceled. So the only bookings that we really had were like partnerships that we created through a variety of different things, but we turned them all to virtually. And there's usually some type of tech issue at each of them, like having trouble logging in or the audio or something. They're all being done mostly on Zoom. Some of them are on Google Meet. But that's been successful, and we're continuing with those into the fall. The challenge is we have no information from the Department of Education here, which is a whole other beast. But so we don't know what's happening with school programs. But a great success for us has been what we did with our summer camp. So we decided to do it all virtually and not have any kids here. As I'm sure you all know, New York was like, you know where we were in April and May. So we said, no kids. And so we just did it all virtually. We did 2-week sessions. We did 4 2-week sessions. It was an 8-week program. And we sent each kid a camp box at the beginning of the beginning of their session. We actually drove it to their houses, and it was wildly successful. Like, kids, if any of you have kids, like, kids getting mail is like the most exciting thing ever. So these kids all got a box, and it has like really cute with tissue paper and pipe cleaners and all sorts of stuff. And it ended up being more crafty than like botanical investigative type of thing, which is more education style, but for this it totally worked and the kids were happy. It was only an hour and a half, whereas camp in person would have been 6 hours or 6.5 hours or something like that. So that's been a really great success, and many of the parents actually said that they would like to do the same or a similar type of virtual program in the fall. So we're doing that. And we are going to pilot an in-person program, a parent-child program in the fall as well, which we're excited about. But we're limiting it, so we're only going to have a maximum of 10 people, which makes it challenging in terms of to make sure that we make ends meet and are able to pay people. How do you charge for that? And that was, I wrote something earlier about access, and it's like, we need to charge each family like $30 or $40 for a 1-hour session, which for some people is not attainable by any means. So on most of our forms now, we have an option where parents or families that can pay more, check a little box and provide a scholarship, add to the scholarship fund for families that don't have. And then those that ask for it can get into these programs for a much lower rate. So that's sort of how we've been juggling the access issue, but it's everywhere. Like, I don't want to just serve wealthy families, but I also have to be able to pay my staff. So it's an interesting challenge, but we're really excited that we're still able to run programs despite everything that's gone on.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Jamie Burkhart from Waterfront Botanical in Louisville, Kentucky. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know, show of hands, nodding heads, how many education departments have actually gone now to 100% virtual learning? And if you have done 100% virtual, considering your COVID status in your state, is that dictated by, say, your governor, a political entity, or is that an internal policy that's happening, from either your board or your executive director?
That's a lot of head shaking, but I would love to hear other people's takes on this. I'll say we are 100%. It is not the governor's orders. We could do in person some, but it would be very limited, and so it's simpler to do everything online than have a few in-person things. And so that's been our approach. But I know a lot of gardens are doing some virtual, some in person. So folks are welcome to pipe up and respond to Jamie.
I can just comment on that briefly. So there was an order, where daycares and only essential daycare programs were allowed to be open for a while, but now things are allowed to be open. We've decided basically the order in my state, in New York State, is that you can have gatherings of up to 50 people, which is insane because I can't think about being around 5 people, let alone 50 people. But anyway, so we've decided just to cap it at 10. We're going to try our first in-person class with 10. And that's sort of just, I spoke to my staff, and that's where everybody's comfort level lies. So it's not a state mandate. It's not even a city mandate. We've just decided that's where we're going to try for now. We did decide not to do any drop-off programs where kids come here and their parents leave. So not doing the daycare thing. We did have a drop-off program prior, but nobody feels comfortable, like if a kid falls down and then you have to go, everybody just wants to be able to make sure we can maintain distance. So we decided internally not to do any drop-off programs. And
thanks, Rebecca. And folks are welcome to also respond. Jamie, I will say a lot of good responses in the chat here. So, thanks everyone for contributing there.
We're doing a series of hybrid classes. So we don't necessarily have a state mandate, and I'm in Georgia, for everything to be virtual, but we are limiting people coming to our building, meaning like people are not coming to our building at all unless they're a staff person. Even with that, we only have maybe 4 or 5 staff members that sign up to come to the building if they want to work there. Otherwise, we're all working from home. But something that has been very successful for us this past few months is doing hybrid programs. So anything that will require classroom learning, like PowerPoint presentations, anything that would be just, sharing of information in that classroom style, we're delivering through Zoom. And then if it has an outdoor component, then we actually will invite people outdoors. So the way that translated is our youth program for our high school students. They had a virtual learning day, which encompassed all of their career discovery, financial literacy, and it was facilitated on Zoom. And then their actual work activities, where they'd be out on the Beltline or they'd be in any of our green spaces, they actually showed up for in person, and we had them in groups of 10 or less, working in spread out spaces, because with our work program, they're part of our maintenance team. And so we're doing that with some of our adult education classes as well, where if there is a learning component, where there's an instructor-led portion that can be done inside of a classroom, we will send that pre-recorded or we'll host it live depending on what the instructor wants. And then for the hands-on outdoor portion, we're asking everyone to wear masks and come outdoors and actually do those things together. So that's been working pretty well. We're getting ready to do another round of that for our forest stewardship for biodiversity in another month or so. Thanks, Dana.
One of the things you hit on that I think is really important is sort of the division of information for hybrid classes, that there's stuff that can be delivered just as easily in an online format. And, we've undergone a situation in this country where, millions of people who had never taken an online class took their first one, got comfortable with it, figured it out, and actually in a lot of cases like it. And I think one thing I just sort of want to put out there in response to your sort of hybrid class idea is I'm not so sure that once we are 100% unrestricted access to spaces, I'm not so sure that our audience isn't going to demand some level of at-home learning in conjunction with in-person experiences. The amount of gas mileage, gas saved alone, the time saved, I think that's one of the things I really want to emphasize is I'm a huge proponent of in-person learning. I'm getting people to the gardens. There are certain things that cannot be replaced, but I think for everyone who's developing this, I think it's a part of our future one way or the other. And so figuring out how to integrate in an effective way is going to be valuable. So, yeah.
I know here in Alabama, we don't have statewide requirements for virtual only. We have mask requirements and capacity regulations we have to follow by the Governor and Department of Public Health, the State Department. But all of our adult ed is virtual. But our youth programming, we're open to the public. I should start by saying that. We have time ticket capacities for people to visit. But we actually successfully did in-person summer camps over this past summer with a great relationship and communication strand with the Alabama Department of Public Health to make sure we were following COVID practices for safety and public health. So very successfully did camps actually over this past summer. The garden reopened in May. And we are listening to the demand of our audience. So our schools, all schools of our area are virtual for the first, I believe it's 9 weeks. And then they're making a judgment call. So we are offering virtual field trips, but we also are recognizing and hearing the demand of our area that there are more homeschooling taking place than ever before. And parents are not happy about having to do all of it. And so we have listened and heard a high demand for on-site programming to help supplement science, hands-on science curriculum. And so we launched the Nature Academy this month, which is offerings that we have each month. Each month has a theme. We do charge for this. There's a season pass price and there's an individual price where it doesn't have to just be virtual ed. It doesn't just have to be homeschoolers. It could be anyone, but it's targeted towards those audiences that can sign up to come to our Nature Academy programming, where we will do hands-on science in a fun, safe, hands-on, social distancing friendly public health way. And so we have capacity restrictions on those and offer it numerous times a month, and sign up has been very successful for it. And that started as a demand that we heard from our community. We have a really great outlet for our parents in our area that we were able to tap into as a resource. So we are doing some on-site still because of the demand that we have, and because we also are in person as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'd love to hear from some more folks, examples of what they're doing with online programming, what has worked for you, that help all of us sort of imagine different things we can do. So who else? I know there's a lot of folks out there doing this programming, so let's hear from you.
Hi, this is Beth at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And one of the really cool things, but I don't have the technology details to share with you, is that we have seen that online classes are going to be part of our future. And in order to make our on-site classes scalable, our AV team is building some really cool, well, we're calling them Zoom rooms, but I'm sure they have a better name for them, where we can run an on-site class, but at the same time, there's various cameras and microphones in the room that will allow us to sell the same experience online. So we're hoping to have that up and running by the beginning of next year. So stay tuned. We'll have more information later.
Thanks, Beth. That's exciting. That's when I've thought about that stuff, my head starts to spin. So I applaud you for you and your team for taking that on. Excited to see what you can come up with there. That's great. Who else? Love to hear at least a few more examples from people, or if you we have about 10 minutes here. If there are questions that you've got that you'd like to pose to the group, we're happy to hear those as well.
I'll just jump in. It's Jill again at Chicago Botanic. I think probably the ones that have, all of our team have different parts that they offer, but photography has been particularly conducive to moving to online. A lot of the classes already, the instructor and the students had exchanged images and things prior to even COVID to, using an online method. So those really converted easily. And I was so happy that one of our instructors and our curriculum advisor, she just kind of ran with it and got us up and running so much faster than if it had been just me, because I would have been really delayed in getting that going. So we were very lucky to have an instructor who could just kind of pick it up and run, and then helped nurture some of the other photography instructors on how to do it. So that was fantastic. So rely on your instructors too.
Thanks, Jill. And Jessica, I think you were ready to pop in at the same time as Jill. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Gabe. So just a couple things that we've been doing. I'm at the University of Washington Botanic Gardens in Seattle, and I manage the adult education programs, and we're entirely virtual. We've been doing a lot of single session classes and a handful of art series. I guess probably in the same way that a lot of you are. I'm trying to think of things that I could add to the conversation. We have found that Zoom webinar is a really good tool for us to kind of control large crowds in classes, to kind of limit how they can communicate with us and with each other in ways that aren't distracting from the content. But it's worked really well to have questions and answers submitted in writing, and then for me to come on camera along with our instructor at specified question breaks and have it be more of a facilitated conversation, where I'm asking the questions or combining questions that have come in. Also, in terms of marketing, our garden typically reserved Facebook events for large events, large seasonal things that were open to the public, and we have started creating a Facebook event for every online class that we have, and it's been incredible. And no extra marketing, no extra advertising, just creating the Facebook events because everybody shares it with their friends. And the art series are the one things that we have limited capacity because the instructor likes to have everybody share their videos and give feedback. And so the art classes that are limited to 10 or 20 people, we've had hundreds of people want to come because they're so popular on Facebook. If only we could scale them easily. But that's probably one really good success. And then just to touch on, Gabe, I love the ideas of having coupon codes or being able to offer more comp seats because you're less limited with physical capacity as you are with in-person classes. Similarly, we get a lot of requests from charities to offer free seats in classes for their auctions, for their fundraising events, and we usually have to turn them down because similarly we have to cover our costs with those seats, and now we can easily offer folks a seat for their fundraisers, which has been really great too.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yep.
I'd be interested in putting out a question to the group here. If anyone for adult audiences has done much experimentation with picking up of supplies for particular classes or mailing, I guess, but just if anyone is running any adult programs and seen that work.
So I can pop back in just real quickly. We haven't done it yet, but we're planning one for this fall, terrariums class, where our instructor works at a local plant shop. And so we're gonna set it up so that people can use materials that they have already on hand, or if they want to use the same supplies that the instructor is using in class, they can go by and do it can be an add-on to the class registration, and then they can go by this plant shop and do a no contact pickup of their class supplies.
Got it. And so is the plant shop also the one teaching it, or you're just contracting with them for the pickup?
We're just contracting with the individual, actually. So she's using her, it will benefit her workplace, and she's teaching for us as an independent contractor. Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Jessica.
Yep.
Anybody else? I saw there's a couple of things in the chat, which I appreciate, and I will review that. Anyone else want to share?
So we're looking into, for adult education, looking into partnering to have supplies delivered for our continuing education programming. Still haven't quite figured out the logistics, but to work with a shop to have the materials delivered to the signups.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. Oh, that'd be the dream. Yeah, that's
ideal. Yes.
Yeah. Anybody else? I'll share that we're challenged by it and also experimenting a bit, both in culinary and in floral design. In floral design, we have provided flower lists that are much more adaptable. So get, something this general color or this general shape so that people can just shop at grocery stores. And that has been relatively successful. We'll also send links to any Amazon purchases if people can get things online. And that has worked. Floral classes have been small. So I'm talking 6 or 7 people, but in those classes, people are getting materials and making along, which is fun. In culinary, people are more accustomed to shopping for food. And so we have had a lot of people sign up for classes where they need to purchase their own ingredients. We'd love to get to a point where they could choose a pickup option to make it a little bit easier and a little bit fancier, and to have us incorporate harder to find ingredients. We've been having more of a challenge running our Indian cooking class as a make at home, because it's just simply harder for the average student to find those ingredients. So yeah, we are testing contactless pickup in September for the Indian cooking class and for a date night class, where we can also throw in some like Phipps goodies and upcharge a little bit. So we're experimenting, but if I'll look at the chat, but if other people have ideas, I'm always happy to hear those.
So this is a little bit more geared towards the school audience regarding materials. I was recently in a conversation with somebody who said that they were having trouble with distribution of their kits, so they sort of changed their mind about how they were going to conduct their, how they were going to conduct their hands-on things, and they ended up turning them into like STEM engineering challenges, where the students had to find items around their house that they were likely to have to create, for example, a model of a tree. And so then they got creative with their materials using things like, soda cans or egg cartons and things that they had. And that ended up being really, really fun, because the students learned about not only the parts of the plants, but they also got to have kind of a show and tell about how they adapted, and everybody got to see everybody else's ingenuity.
Thanks, Tracy.
That is something that we kind of dipped our foot into in lieu of summer camps on site this year. We were going to offer virtual summer camps. It was a little more time consuming than we anticipated, making that virtual versus live. But we did a fun press plant activity that we linked to YouTube on our site, and just kind of encourage the kids to go out and find materials to press plants and create artwork from it. So that is something then, as the distance learning manager, I'm going to kind of fold into something then for middle school and high school students as a STEM project. Go out and find and do and study and bring back and create something. So that's a great idea, Tracy.
One final point I wanted to make here and put out to see if there are some examples. I think one thing that has been a little bit of a challenge for us in the transition to online has been creating a sense of a student community. People come for the information, but they often stay for the friendships and the connections made in class. And so we have seen that in some classes, in some of our smaller classes, where people have been able to kind of talk back and forth, but it's been a challenge. And I just wonder if anyone has any examples from their education where they've seen students connecting with one another, sort of chatting back and forth, getting some of that that energy of student interaction back into the classroom. Does anyone have any examples from their programs, online programs thus far, that has generated some of that?
Well, I don't know how personal it is, but when we started our online classes and we had more people than we normally had, like 50 in a class, if someone in the chat asked a question about something the instructor had said, oftentimes there were 3 or 4 people in the class who were responding to the person in the chat saying, oh yeah, we've done that, or this is where you go to find that, or. So in that sense, even though it's like 50 people, they're kind of communicating with one another up and down the ladder. And I think that is better than a live classroom where everyone's just talking to one another, So I think that's an advantage to to having online classes. There's experts in the audience who can answer the questions, which is great.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And it does take them from just a passive role to more of an active role, contributing to the conversation. So that's terrific. Thanks, Duncan. Any other?
Gabe, I have a success story and a question mark on that issue. So I'm Jeremy Joslin from the Morton Arboretum. This connection between participants is something that's come up in our youth volunteer program. This is a summer-long program where in a normal year, kids would be volunteering in different roles in our children's garden. And we took it completely online this year, and we gave them some topics that they could work on and build projects on their own in their own surroundings, whether it's like nature play with younger family members or any STEAM kind of research or projects they wanted to do. And then they'd report back in Google Classroom. And one thing we heard was that they missed the sense of camaraderie that comes with showing up for a regular volunteer shift over the course of a summer. And so what we did was we tried to do more kind of office hours like we were doing for staff, but for the youth volunteers, and going just completely like off topic. Like we did a baking office hour with one of our staff members making like a rhubarb crisp, and just doing some more like unrelated topics to get them a sense of, okay, we're in this together as we're all kind of volunteering apart. So it was interesting to see that need come up and then try to address it in a longer term program. In shorter programs, we've also done some virtual camps, and we used Seesaw to get some of that sense of community in a week-long program. And we had a lot of success with that. So it's interesting to see both the success in like a shorter week-long program with regular participants able to engage that way. But then also over the longer program, seeing that kind of fall short and then trying to address it again as the program went on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. We're about at time. I did see Linda G. I just noticed that you have a hand raised in the chat, which is very polite. I just wondered if you do have something to add.
Thank you, Gabe. This is Linda from Green Bay Botanical Garden. I just had a question. So at Green Bay Botanical Garden right now, we're mainly just doing Facebook Lives because we just don't have much capacity to put the time and energy into figuring out the virtual platform. We've done a few adult classes in person and some summer camps in person. And I'm just wondering who else is in a situation where their school districts are completely virtual, at least to start off this school year. Our Green Bay Public School District is. Other school districts in the area are going to be doing some in-person. But we have been thinking about what can we provide to the families that are going to be home with their kiddos all day long, and provide them with an outlet at the garden, or provide the district with space at the garden. And now we're losing an educator, so really it's just me and one intern. So we can't really provide docents or lead programs. And I saw a few people saying that they've got some self-guided things going on. And there was something at the Dallas Arboretum, of course I can't see it. Oh, some daily STEM lessons and teacher professional development. But just wondering if anybody else is offering some just drop-in things or more self-guided things for the families that might be coming out. You know, we've got scavenger hunts, we've got some activity backpacks, but just kind of exploring what else can we do for those families to help support them.
Folks, feel free to respond to Linda. We've got a few minutes. I will just mention that we are hoping to address school programs in a future webinar. We know that this is a big topic and something that a lot of people are trying to grapple with. So please, welcome to sort of share anything you've got going on, but just know that we recognize it's a big topic and are hoping to address it in a future program.
Thanks, Gabe.
Yeah, sure. Anyone have any examples to share with Linda? The things that they're doing? Happy to take a couple here.
I can chime in. This is Maggie from the North Carolina Arboretum again. I work in the adult education department, but I know that the youth education department is doing a drop-off program that might be about all I know about it, since I'm not super involved. But I can, share the website or some contact information if anyone wants to get in touch to find out more about what they're doing.
Thanks, Maggie.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Linda, is your garden open to visitors?
Oh yes, I should have said that. We've been open since May, end of May, and our state has a mask requirement for indoors, not outdoors, and some limitations on group gatherings. But otherwise, we are open to the public, and we've been having groups come through, and just lots of a fair amount of general visitors coming through as well.
Okay, so Mo from Atlanta Botanical Garden and I, like Maggie, don't work with the youth programs team as much. I work mostly with adults, but I know that about a month ago, we are allowed in Atlanta, yay, Georgia, to have visitors at limited capacity. And so we do have our family programs. We used to have them in our children's garden, kind of there, storybook time and kind of a nature scavenger hunt that families could do. And like a move it, shake it kind of situation for young learners. Again, this was all up in our children's garden, and what we've done to help space, our children's garden is only 2 acres and it wasn't a lot of space. So to help people feel comfortable with social distancing, we've moved it all down to our lawn area. So people can kind of come up and grab the tools that they want to do for like the shakers and maracas for the move and shake time. And then for the nature scavenger hunt, we have that like set up at a table that, again, people can just grab and go and then kind of reconvene in that hour. They're about an hour long programs, all of them. We reconvene in that hour to like share what they found on the nature scavenger hunt. That's something we kind of did in lieu of summer programs at the garden, because we were open during the summer, but we decided not to do summer camps, as it were. And now that school is starting back for us here with Atlanta Public Schools, we've kind of made a bigger version of that for school teachers. Atlanta Public Schools is starting mostly virtual, but there are some schools within the area that are doing hybrid. So we've got kind of like a virtual tour that the schools can do. And if they are comfortable, they can encourage their students to come to the garden on a timed ticket situation. I hope that made sense.
Thanks, Mo.
Awesome, thank you.
With that, I want to sort of wrap things up. I have just a couple of quick slides here to put a bow on this. As far as next steps, I have a few that we will do and a couple of suggestions. We will send the results of the Padlet. If you have any other sort of thoughts you want to add after the meeting, feel free. I'll send that out. I'll sort of finalize it probably tomorrow. And then I'll follow up ultimately with everyone who said they were willing to share their tech setup. So I'll email you this week with sort of next steps there. And I'd love to get something back in the next 2 weeks from everyone if I can. I would like to challenge everyone to find 3 people to talk to from this meeting, either set up a 30-minute Zoom call or email exchange with 3 people who are doing work you admire. So we hope that this community continues to sort of grow and thrive outside of this. I also would really suggest considering a class exchange. So offer a spot in one of your classes in exchange to sit in on someone else's. We haven't been able to really do that as a community before. And it's a little bit embarrassing and a little bit like nerve-wracking, like, is my quality good enough? And, just do it, because you will learn so much by being a student, sitting in on someone's classes. I think it'll really accelerate everyone's learning curve. So I highly recommend that. And please, please, please continue to use the message boards. They're the best resource for sort of ongoing group dialogue. And our group is like the best at it. Like, of all of the communities, like, we're number 1. So like, just let's, keep at it. I think it's a great resource. And then we will continue to have webinars. So just finally, please save the dates here, September 23rd. These are all Wednesdays, September 23rd, October 21st, and November 18th. They're all 90 minutes. They start at 3:30 Eastern. They start same time as today. So whatever time it is when you started today, the same time in the future. Topics are still coming out. We're finalizing those topics. So just keep an eye out, but we'll have more information for you soon. And I'll offer, if anyone wants to sit in on a Phipps class, just email me. My email address is there. You can check out our, all of our stuff's online. If there's anything you want to sit in on, just let me know. We'll get you comped in. And then I may ask to sit in on one of yours. We'll see. With that said, I do want to say thank you to Joan Thomas, who is our liaison through APGA. She's been phenomenal in helping us organize all of this. And also Christy Weber, our chair. She joined us just a few minutes late, so she wasn't able to do her introduction. But Christy, do you want to say hello and goodbye?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that, Gabe. Hello, everybody. It's been marvelous just hearing all this terrific conversation and idea sharing. And Gabe, thank you so much. You've done a yeoman's job of pulling this topic together and really making it a wonderful conversation. So, it's just, it's always very heartwarming to me just to get together with everyone. I think it's easy at this time to think, oh my gosh, I have this and that, and get a little more insular. And then you realize, like, just everyone is, we're all in versions of the same boat. So that's where I think it, again, it's just so heartening, that everybody is so willing to share. So thank you again, Gabe. Gosh, this is a great webinar lead off.
My pleasure, and it's great to see so many faces here. I appreciate everyone's contributions. With that said, thanks for being here. I'm gonna save the chat and have all that collected. Feel free to save the chat yourself if you want to have any of your private conversations chronicled. We hope to see you on the message boards, and we'll hope to see you at the next webinar as well. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Okay, bye.